Welcome to the ChristiTutionalist Politics podcast show. Over time, the fancy high production items will come. But for now, for starters, it is just you as a listener that I can barely begin to express how much I appreciate you tuning in. As listen notes, the podcast platform reports there are about 168.9 million plus available podcast show episodes you could choose from, and I appreciate you taking the time to listen to me. All substance, no muss, no fuss, no fluff, no fancy or flashy high production inserts. A show that looks at a variety of topics through a Christian U.S. constitutionalist lens, hence the ChristiTutionalist Politics show name. I am your host, Joseph M. Leonard, author, co-host of Savage Unfiltered podcast, and for purposes of this show, most notably, blogger for thelibertybeacon.com, which most of the content for this show will be derived food for thought you can then delve deeper into via my online articles and reach your own conclusion. And as Graham Norton would say, let's get on with the show! Welcome. Today's topic, BiDUMB tries to flip off the SCOTUS Student Debt Transfer Edition. And as Rush Limbaugh would say, I hold here in my formerly, well, in my case, not formerly, nicotine-stained hands, as you can hear me rustling my notes. There is a lot to go through. I have my notes to make sure I don't miss much. At least I hope I won't miss much, even with notes. Sometimes things go awry, as I'm sure you all well know. At any rate, the first thing I want to mention before delving into the SCOTUS decision declaring unconstitutional the illegal executive branch executive order overreach to give money stolen from others to younger people to buy votes, that this is, in many respects, a tax code issue. We need to touch upon that. The tax code is written in such a way to pander and favor some while stealing from others to redistribute in order to buy favors, buy votes, to let some know you're special. And we want to give you money. Not only do you not have to pay taxes, these credits, which should offset actual tax you would owe, are instead a personal welfare check, which is, of course, also illegal, unconstitutional, a direct violation and distortion of our founders' intent to promote the general welfare. I'm putting that in air quotes, though that is a term, a phrase worthy of actual quote. It's welfare and LBJ's Great Society welfare state that deserves the air quotes, because it's illegal. Individual federal personal welfare checks are not what the intent of the founders had behind promote the general welfare, which is promoting freedom, promoting equality, promoting free markets, so that we all have opportunity, equal time, not equity, equal outcomes, opportunity for the cream to rise to the top. But instead, we are offering quote unquote credits that give people money above and beyond the tax debt they owe. They are getting checks, aren't legally deserved in my mind, in the parlance of the Constitution and the promotion of the general welfare and equality. Those are special carve-outs, special favors, special rights, which go against equal protections. They are special privileges. That term the left loves so much. Oh my God, white privilege. Well, a lot of these people getting these carve-outs and handouts aren't based on their skin tone, which is a good thing, actually, for a change. For once, an instance where skin tone and affirmative action, we'll get into next week, with BiDUMB tries to flip off the SCOTUS affirmative action edition, but this is one case where they're picking and choosing not based on skin tone, but on class. Not an issue of race, but an issue of class, and picking and choosing winners and losers over others in order to give handouts to create what? Dependency. As Candace Owens calls it, the new demo KKK rats plantation. A plantation of dependency so that you, not you, of course, but some that the left wants to pander to, put on their new demo KKK rats plantation. And again, not about race. It's about class. This is not Black America versus white America. There are a whole lot of blacks, a whole lot of whites, pink, purple-haired freaks, and every other kind of skin tone and hair color in between, picked and chosen to receive carve-outs in order to pander to receive their dependency vote upon the deep state of government. And that includes some rhinos, as we've discussed before. Not the uniparty, the establishment, hack, deep state. CINOs, rhinos, FASCICRATS, comprising the deep state. And what is the deep state of the alphabet agencies? Comprised of exactly that. People whose livelihoods they prefer to come in the form of government paychecks, who are, of course, then loyal to other deep staters, other leftists, other rhinos, FASCICRATS, deep state protectors, their own dependency there. The politicians who want to grow or keep the size of government, so these buffoons with make-work jobs in the government keep their checks. Yet another different form of dependency and therefore payback in return, another form of vote buying. But back to the tax code. Not all people pay taxes. As I've discussed, there's a large sector of society that gets money back in the name of taxes, supposedly. That's not taxation, that's welfare checks.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hi, my name is Ed Bondarenka, and I host Your American Heritage on Saturdays at 2 in the afternoon on this station. Your American Heritage is a show about the struggle we find ourselves in and how to react to it in the light of our biblical and American heritage. Listen to it while you're working around the house, the garage, cleaning the guns, walking the dog, driving, or just lazing around. Join me at 2 o'clock Saturdays here on Wham Radio, 1600 AM, 92.7 FM.
God bless America.
Which again, unconstitutional, completely devoid of the reality of the intent of our founders. Another warped and distorted and twisting of the language in order to create and rein in communism, fascism, socialism. Around 50% maybe of all Americans don't even pay taxes. So the student debt transfer scheme isn't even about redistributing wealth from 90% of Americans to less than 10% of Americans getting these worthless degrees because we're not teaching them anything. And I will get into Bill Cassidy put forth a bill, at least somebody is attempting to think, is at least attempting to do something. The wrong thing, in my opinion, but at least someone's attempting to think and attempting to do something. It will, of course, go nowhere in the U.S. Senate. Schumer and the left and the Democrats who can control the Senate part of the Congress burying that bill. It will never see the light of day. But the point here is transfer a somewhat small sector of people who actually pay taxes, 50% just to use a number, to less than 10%, who will now also then not pay taxes because they're getting these credits, or they're getting this forgiveness, supposedly, which, of course, is a joke. There's no such thing as a free lunch. Somebody pays. But yes, in theory, overall, it is redistributing the hard-working, blue-collar American wealth to usually upper middle class, enriched, spoiled brat kids, and or those who are going to these higher learning centers that didn't earn their way. Again, affirmative action discussed next week. But allowing people to go to college that probably have no business going to college should be going to a trade school, and yes, more on that coming, to learn a real valid skill that then affords them a job opportunity, employment opportunity to immediately earn money and become a productive member of society and paying into the tax code rather than getting more out than they've ever paid in yet, because they've not done much with their life to create earnings, to create wealth, to pay any taxes on. Secondly, I wanted to discuss the Kristi Noem ad. Not sure if you've seen it. South Dakota is hiring Kristi Noem as a plumber, Kristi Noem as a dentist, Kristi Noem as a welder, stating, come to South Dakota because there are all kinds of jobs there. So South Dakota legislature, which Kristi Noem then signed, created their own tax code carve-outs and incentives to help bring people to fill jobs in South Dakota that are open. So there is that. I don't think most people disagree with an occasional incentive to help straighten out a particular situation that is supposed to be temporary. But the problem, of course, is, as Reagan said, there is nothing more permanent than a temporary government program, and especially a government handout. So while I understand what South Dakota is doing there, I cannot agree with it. I understand it, unless that particular legislation has a hard sunset date. This will expire and may not be renewed. And in fact, for me to believe that, it should have been a South Dakota state constitution amendment, putting it in their constitution so that it could not be re-legislated, not be re-upped by the legislature after the sunset date. So it would have indeed been an actual temporary program. Thirdly, define fair, right? Depends on what the definition of is. I've discussed over and over in my writings and mentioned a few times on this ChristiTutionalist Politics podcast, the left twists and warps language. They've been doing it for decades. They cannot have an honest conversation. So in order to deflect, distract, distort, deny, dodge, they have to redefine the terms to match their false narrative and support their falsehood, their current narrative of how they want you to think, what they want you to believe, the gaslighting of the day. And that is no different here. Again, these aren't credits, they're handouts. This isn't forgiveness, this is redistribution. No such thing as a free lunch, as I've already said, and yes, am repeating here because it bears and is worth repeating. No such thing is free. Stealing from Steve to give to Eve is not charity. A whole other rabbit hole and topic to go down. Our Christian faith says we are to be our brother's keeper, but that is not the warping of the Bible as the left render unto Caesar. Jesus was not a socialist. This does not mean to be my brother's keeper. Let the government with the barrel of a gun steal from Steve at the house on that side of me to give to Eve on the other side of my house. That's not how this works. It never worked that way. It will never work that way because why? The government steals. It takes off 50 to 80% of those monies off the top for themselves, for the deep state, or handouts to their friends, their family, their donors to pay back donors, money laundering, all part of the cycle to help keep these incumbent deep staters elected, and those of us fighting it, them money to try to keep us on the outside, which this is an aside, why we can't have more campaign finance laws. No, the federal government cannot fund federal campaigns or campaigns of any kind. It is up to the politician to raise the money. And it is our First Amendment speech rights, freedom of association, and property rights, as money is our property, to give to whomever is a good candidate that will go to take on the system, whomever we want to help fight the system. That's why the McLean-Feingold campaign finance law that the SCOTUS improperly only picked and chose some parts to overturn, Roberts and his idiocy to moderate the courts and continually return only partial rulings, like the affirmative action wouldn't have been necessary had they properly ruled in the previous U of M race-baiting affirmative action challenge case, and the Colorado Baker cake case. The website case would not have been necessary had they properly ruled about compelled speech on that. But moderation is what Roberts sees his job as with the court, to provide lower amounts of controversy. That's not your job, Chief Just Ass Oh, I'm sorry. I mean Justice. No, I didn't mean that. Chief Justice, as I call him, Roberts. It's not your job to moderate. It's your job to adhere the laws to the Constitution, not partially rule on this and that, to slowly overturn things. And eventually, maybe in 20, 30, 50 years, get to where we should have been 10, 20 years ago, because you didn't rule fully on the cases as you should have. And we can even throw the Dobbs decision in on that. They all of a sudden discovered the 10th Amendment and states' rights. Let's return it to the states, while still completely ignoring the 14th Amendment right of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness and equal protections. But again, another rabbit hole. That's not this discussion. This is student debt transfer. But that sets that all up. And no sooner does the SCOTUS decide that ruling, the left is, of course, scheming to rework a new one. It's like the New York gun laws. Did you see that? The New York gun laws were struck down by the Supreme Court, and what did they do? All the leftists in charge of the deep, deep blue state of New York gathered themselves together and came up with a new bill for a new law. And as the Who used to say, meet the new boss, same as the old boss. Just because you change a word here and there doesn't mean it's actually different or new, and is still in violation of the SCOTUS ruling, but they are right in your face saying we are going to reenact the same basic gun laws and enforce them, while we dare you to then challenge us again in the courts and take it to the Supreme Court, because Roberts is causing the court to hear so many cases over and over again that should have been settled. It takes a decade or more, sometimes decades, to get a case reheard that was already settled, because the left understands the SCOTUS has no enforcement arm. They have no respect for the Constitution and the separation of powers, and the SCOTUS makes a ruling, and they basically say, bleep you, right? Hence the title of this week's show and article. BiDUMB tries to flip off the SCOTUS. Ha! You ruled that? Well, we're just going to ignore it because you don't have an army. There's really nothing you can do. And unfortunately, the deep state will back this usurpation, to use the word from the Norton v. Shelby case that has been discussed or will be discussed, likely to be discussed over and over, mentioned again to get people to try to pay attention to that. Well, Lisa McClain from Michigan, where I'm from, of course, slammed the new Biden student loan move as a direct violation of the Supreme Court's decision. And of course, that's exactly what it is. That's exactly what I said. They all get into a room, the professors, just like with the affirmative action case, right? The university, deep state supporting administrators, professors, and leftist politicians wanting to buy votes. Yes, I'm saying it. Conspire. Yes, they all get in a room and say, this will be the new distraction, deflection, dodge, distortion, deny that we're doing the same thing, even though everyone knows we're doing the same thing over again, just putting lipstick on the pig, if you recall that phrase from the McLean, as I called him, Palin presidential run, where lipstick on a pig became the phrase of the decade thereafter. My piece for thelibertybeacon.com is really a repurposing of a Before It's News piece titled, it's called Leverage, and about darn time real conservatives use it over the quick early sellouts, CNOs, and rhinos. And in the speakership case, which that article was mainly about, though I did go into some policy and some thoughts, and I will get into that in a minute, the strategy is working, or was working at that time, to get promises to move that Overton window back to the right from the leftward trend. Important updates being added in real time. But Bill Cassidy, I want to get to and mention, Republican from Louisiana, has put forth a bill that would create an opportunity, although I'm not happy with how they plan to pay for it, more taxation, more like BiDUMB wants, redistribution from a bunch of others to pay for a student loan counseling requirement. All going to get a student loan would be then required to go through a counseling program that would figure out for them, sit with them, what is your core degree that you're going for? What will the courses be, along with the required liberal arts courses that the college used to pad, have nothing to do with your degree, but steal more money from you? What will all those then add up to? And therefore, what will be your loan debt? And what will be the required payment? And those debts cannot be erased in bankruptcy. You will be expected to pay for them, because we don't teach economics. And the point here being, trying to impress upon some of these young skulls full of mush, to quote Rush again, that maybe college isn't for you. If you don't know what you want, if you don't know what you're doing, if you don't know the direction you're going in, college is not the place to go to figure that out and take a bunch of worthless gender studies classes. What we need to impress upon children is that you need to get real and valued degrees like accounting, business, economics, legal, medical, STEM fields, skilled trades. Maybe a trade college is better off for you. And I go back to the Christy Nomads, her as a welder, right? They need welders. We need plumbers. We need electricians. Maybe go to a trade college, and then you can come out with next to no debt and earning $100,000 a year right off the bat in your new career, rather than having a worthless gender studies degree and wonder why you can't get a good paying job. We're going to leave it there for now. Of course, you should go to the Liberty Beacon corresponding piece and find out a whole lot more. It goes a whole lot more in depth. Other things I didn't touch on. The podcast and the articles are meant to complement each other, not necessarily only just repeat or parrot each other. Thank you all for tuning in. I know 168.9 million plus podcast episodes floating around out there you could choose to listen to. Thank you for tuning into this one. Please subscribe if you would, like and share, of course, and especially share the link to the podcast or the article, preferably both, with all your friends and family, and even people you don't talk to anymore that you know need to hear these facts, this tough truth, this tough love that ChristiTutionalist Politics podcast provides. Take care. God bless. Thank you for having tuned into ChristiTutionalist Politics Show. Please tune in to Savage Unfiltered Podcast, of which I am a co-host, and be sure to check out more about today's discussion at thelibertybeacon.com, where my articles drop every Saturday. In addition to seeing the corresponding piece referenced in any episode of ChristiTutionalist Podcast, see to the show transcript on podcast platforms that provide access to it, like Buzzsprout at tinyurl.com/ChristiTutionalist for additional bonus material there in the transcript. Thank you.
It is a myth that terrorism stopped during COVID. Unfortunately, mainstream media opted to prioritize pandemic hysteria over promoting all news. Terrorism continues. Simply hoping that it doesn't affect you is not a strategy. The new book, Terror Strikes, coming soon to a city near you, featured on The Author Show, is now available in paperback from bookstores, online, or as an ebook exclusively through Amazon Kindle. Terror Strikes, coming soon to a city near you by Joseph M. Leonard. Order today.